everybody, in this video we're going to talk about how you can represent qualitative data in a visual way. So take 3 deep breaths and let's make this math easy. Okay, so if we want to represent qualitative data visually, first of all, let's just remind ourselves of what qualitative data is. So qualitative data is the type of data where you're splitting things up into categories, but it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with numbers. So for example, asking people what eye color they have, because you're going to get different categories of blue and brown and green and hazel and whatever. And so qualitative data are data points where the responses that you're getting are categorizable. I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to make it one. And in this class, we're going to have 5 different methods that we can use to represent this data visually. And technically, these 2 methods are almost the same thing, so we kind of like have 4. But these are the different ways we're going to represent qualitative data so that you can visualize it and interpret it. And this is really important if you have like hundreds or thousands of data points, because you don't want to look at a list of everybody's eye colors if there's thousands of things in the list. And so it's important to be able to visualize it and summarize it in a more understandable way. So the first type of representation we're going to look at is frequency tables. So a frequency table is basically when you list all of the different categories that your qualitative data can be sorted into. And then you count how many of your data points are within that category. So for example, this frequency table summarizes the colors of cars that were involved in accidents. And then these numbers represent how many cars are in each category. So there's 25 blue cars, 52 green cars, 41 red cars, etc. And this is a really useful way to summarize all of your qualitative data. And we could take this same information and represent it with a bar graph. And on a bar graph, you basically make the y-axis of the graph represent the frequency of how often it happens. And then along the x-axis of the graph, you list all of your different categories. And so since we had 25 blue cars, this bar goes up to the 25 mark for the blue cars. And so a frequency table and a bar graph communicate the same information. They just show it in a different way. And I kind of like bar graphs because they're easier to see and you can see the contrast between the different colors of the cars. So that's the second method that we'll use to represent qualitative data. And then there's also what are called Pareto charts. So I had actually never heard of these before because basically they are a bar chart, but they are listed in order from greatest to least. So you rearrange the order of the categories so that the largest category is listed first and the smallest category is listed last. So basically they're the exact same thing as a bar chart, they're just arranged in a specific order. And then the third type of chart that we have to represent qualitative data is a pie chart. So a pie chart is based on the percentage that each category makes up of the whole. So in this example where we're looking at the vehicle colors of the different cars, you could figure out how many total cars there are by doing 23 plus 52 plus 41 plus 39 plus 36 plus 25. And that tells you that the total equals 216. And so since the total number of cars that were looked at in this study was 216, you could find the percentage of each color by doing the number of cars in that color divided by 216. So to find the green percentage, I do 52 divided by 216. And when I do that, I get about 24%. And you'll notice that this section of the pie chart fills up about 24% of the entire circle. And so essentially, each wedge of the pie chart, or the size of each wedge, represents the percentage of the data set that fits into that category. And when you're looking at pie charts, it's very common actually for them to be described with percentages. In this particular pie chart, it was represented with numbers, but it is very common for them to actually use the percentages to describe the different sections of the pie chart. And then the last type of representation we'll be using is a pictogram. So a pictogram is basically where you take a picture and you represent the proportionality of the different categories based on the size of the picture. So you can see in this one, they use a large picture of money to represent manager salaries and a small picture to represent worker salaries. And I could have also made a pictogram for the example we saw in the previous slides where you were looking at the car colors, because you could find a picture of a little blue car, a red car, a green car, like all the different colors, and you could make the size of the pictures proportional to the number of cars that were that color. And so a pictogram is basically where you make the picture size represent the size of the category within the data set. So these are the 5 different ways we can represent qualitative data. And on your assignments and quizzes, you're going to be asked to make some of these representations. So you'll be given a data set and then you can make these representations. And then you will also be asked to interpret them. So for example, on this one, maybe a question might be, how many more green cars are there than blue cars? And so you'd say, well, there's like 52 green cars minus the 25 green cars, and whatever number you get, that would be how many more green cars you have than blue cars. Or you might get a question like, how many black cars or gray cars are there? In which case you would say, well, there's 40 black cars and it looks like 24 gray cars. And so you would add those two together and that would give you the total number of black and gray cars. So there's lots of different types of questions that you can ask to interpret the different visual representations. But the main idea is just that there's lots of different ways that you can represent qualitative data so that you don't have to look at lists of thousands and thousands of data points, but you can have them nicely summarized so that you can interpret it. So I hope that this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, let me know.